And if I told you once, I ain't gonna tell you twice. Salute all my real ones. Look, bro, did the CIA actually sell crack in the 80s? Probably, yo. You know what I'm saying? With all the stuff that be going on with the government, who knows? They probably did, you know what I'm saying? They were giving people, you know, LSD and all this stuff. What program was that? Where they were trying to like mess around with mind control and brainwashing and all that stuff. Who knows, man? But I actually saw this, like, cause I make a playlist of like things I want to react to, and like I read this, I'm like, yo, hold on. I actually skipped it forward. Like, I really want to react to this. So, like button, subscribe button, notification bell, press those. Let's go.
I will tell you, Director Deutsch, as a former Los Angeles police narcotics detective, that the agency has dealt drugs throughout this country for a long time.
For decades, the American government has been accused of intentionally flooding the streets with hard drugs. The CIA and law enforcement has supposedly been funneling drugs into the inner cities and to the African American community in particular as part of a covert effort to stop them attaining stability, building wealth, and achieving political power.
It is aimed at African American, there's no doubt about that whatsoever. And for the other non-African people, they should know that this directly will harm them too.
These ideas took particular hold in the 1980s.
Like, this gives me a vibe like of y'all remember the beginning of Scarface, where like they showed all the geopolitical things that's happening in Cuba and America, and they got the music playing, and that beat, I think Mobb Deep took it and flipped it and made the yeah, matter of fact, if y'all never heard that song, look up Mobb Deep featuring Nas, It's Mine. And they took the beat from Scarface. I feel like this is the vibe they trying to do to give, but obviously this beat from this video right here ain't as hard as that beat.
The emergence of the so-called crack epidemic. It's easy to understand how people of color may not believe the US authorities have their best interests at heart. But do these particular drug charges stick? Did the intelligence agencies actually play a role in flooding American cities with cocaine? In this episode, we're exploring whether the CIA was actually responsible for the crack epidemic and how.
Bruh, I really wouldn't be surprised if that's the truth, though. I really wouldn't be surprised. Can't put it past them. Like, I'm not the biggest conspiracy theory dude, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I wouldn't be surprised.
How exactly this story gained so much traction? The story of the CIA and crack cocaine doesn't actually begin on the streets of LA or Miami. It begins in the jungles of Central America. In 1979, the dictatorial government of Nicaragua was overthrown by socialist revolutionaries called the Sandinistas. In response, right-wing groups known as the Contras began a brutal paramilitary campaign, receiving money and weapons from the CIA as part of the Cold War struggle against the Soviet Union.
If we cut off the freedom fighters, we will be giving the Soviets a free hand in Central America, handing them one of their greatest foreign policy victories since World War II.
But in 1982, Democrats in Congress passed laws to cut off support for the Nicaraguan rebels. So the Contras and their CIA backers had to find new ways of funding their struggle. What they found was cocaine. By the late 1970s, more people in the US were snorting coke than ever before. Most of it imported from Colombia. In the early 80s, smokable cocaine, or crack, exploded across American cities. This proved to be a gold mine for countless organized crime groups, even those backed.
It wasn't early in the 80s, it was later in the 80s.
By the CIA.
And today, cocaine and marijuana are found throughout our society from top to bottom. And that means corruption, top to bottom, and gang war violence.
The Contras were soon linked with Colombian cartels, and in 1985, reporters Robert Parry and Brian...
Oh, yo, I'm bugging. If y'all wanna see a dope story about, like, you know, how it was going down in the 80s, especially in Florida, Cocaine Cowboys. Y'all gotta watch that documentary. Cocaine Cowboys Part 1 and specifically Part 2, both 1 and 2. Y'all gotta watch those. Fire. Like, even though it's a documentary, like the story's like fire. It's about Griselda Blanco. Like, trust me, I'm telling you.
Barger broke an almost unbelievable story. They claimed Nicaraguan rebels were involved in cocaine trafficking, and that not only did the CIA know about these activities, they allowed them to continue in order to help fund the Contras war effort.
When Bob Perry and Brian Barger got a hold of a CIA report revealing that they were working in the mid-1980s with Contras fighting the Sandinista government, they were warned by their editors that this was not something that was going to make the people that own their newspapers very happy, and both of them ended up losing their jobs.
At this point, the CIA strongly denied that they were involved in the drug trade. But on the streets, the rumors began to spread that the government was either actively or passively allowing crack to be sold. These remained just rumors until 1996, when a reporter with the San Jose Mercury News named Gary Webb picked up the story from a new angle. Webb investigated the case of Freeway Rick Ross, who in the early 1980s was the most important kingpin in LA's crack scene, and probably America's first ever crack millionaire.
What's the most money you ever made in a day?
$3 million.
What Webb uncovered was that Ross's main cocaine supplier was a guy named Danilo Blandon, a Nicaraguan exile who funneled tens of thousands of dollars in cocaine profits back to the Contras through banks in Miami. Blandon, in turn, worked for Norwin Menezes, perhaps the biggest drug trafficker in Nicaragua, who had deep ties to the Contra leadership and was widely thought to benefit from CIA protection.
The DEA had always tried to arrest Norwin Menezes, who was living openly and raising money for the Contras, but had never been able to build a case against him, and felt like there was something about this guy that must explain why they couldn't do that he was protected, in other words.
Well, real quick, if y'all know, y'all see they mentioned Freeway Rick Ross. I don't know if y'all do know, but he does not like Rick Ross, the rapper, because he's like, yo, you took my name and, you know, you was a CEO, all this other stuff. So it's crazy that, like, they already mentioned in Freeway Rick Ross or something like this.
And when Gary Webb's story came along, he not only showed where the connection was between Menezes and Blandon and Freeway Ricky Ross, but he also went into all this history and unveiled how there was a very large, well-documented crack distribution ring that had operated for years, with the CIA turning a blind eye.
What's the process you go through? Like, okay, you're the guy on top, and where do you get your coke from?
I was getting my coke from a guy by the name of Oscar Danilo Blandon, who also was my informant. He's the guy that set me up with the police. When I went to trial, we found out that he was what they call a Contra. The Contras was backed by the CIA, and it sparked this big investigation by this reporter called Gary Webb.
In August of 1996, the Mercury...
When he said he was my informant, he meant that, like, he's the guy that was snitching on Rick Ross, right? Because, yeah. I think I get it, but it's like, why would you say he's my informant? You wouldn't, like, most drug dealers don't want to be associated with informants. And he's saying, these my informant that set me up with the police.
News published Webb's reports in a 3-part series titled Dark Alliance. The story grabbed attention across the US, particularly amongst the African American community, which had been targeted by law enforcement following the rise of crack.
Tell America what the story is about. It was about a cocaine ring that operated along the west coast of the United States throughout most of the 80s. And some of the money they were making was going to support an army that the men who ran the cocaine ring worked for, called the FDN. This was an army that the CIA started in 1981 and supported.
Better known to us, most of us who remember news, the Contras.
Nowhere in Dark Alliance did Webb explicitly assert that the CIA was responsible for the crack epidemic, let alone that they intentionally sold the drug. But that was the narrative that got picked up in the popular imagination, probably not helped by the Mercury News illustrating the feature with an image of a guy smoking a crack pipe superimposed on the CIA logo. But the story took off not just due to his explosive claims, but also because of another new and highly addictive force that had begun to reshape American society: the internet. Dark Alliance was the first major piece of investigative journalism to be published simultaneously in print and online. The story went viral, getting picked up by everyone from street protesters to talk radio hosts and eventually politicians looking to attack the Reagan and Bush administrations. California Congresswoman Maxine Waters became a particular champion of the piece.
As a public elected officials, all of us must be concerned that our government could have anyway been involved in drug trafficking.
The reaction to the story was so intense that the CIA director took the unprecedented step of defending the agency at a heated LA community meeting.
It is an appalling charge that goes to the heart of this country. I will get to the bottom of it, and I will let you know the results of what I found.
How are we supposed to trust the CIA official to investigate themselves?
What was equally shocking, though, was the reaction of America's mainstream media. Webb and the San Jose Mercury News often maintained that Dark Alliance was intended as the beginning of an investigation that larger newspapers with more resources could then continue. But what actually happened was that instead of investigating the CIA, major papers like the LA Times, Washington Post, and New York Times all attacked Webb himself. Webb was eventually hounded from his job and found himself unable to work as a journalist. He died by suicide in 2004.
All three major newspapers felt completely caught off guard by this story, so they fully attacked Gary Webb with a vengeance, unlike anything that had ever been seen before, and completely attempted to not only discredit his story and frame it as a conspiracy theory, but pretty much ruin his entire reputation.
We saw a complete failure, perhaps one of the most shameful examples of how the mainstream press can operate in destroying a fellow journalist for getting at an important story. And Webb suffered mightily for this.
But as people got more and more lost...
I mean, I won't lie though, right? Like, if you gonna make a claim like that, and it's the unfortunate reality, like, I've seen it too many times in movies. I love movies, so, you know what I'm saying? A lot of times I'm gonna quote movies, but apply it to real life because it's actually applicable. Seen it too many times in movies, seen it too many times in real life. Like, you could have good intentions, and you could be like, yo, this is the truth, and the public must know, and the people must know. But Gary Webb should have known. He probably knew, like, yo, if I'm gonna print this, and I'm gonna come after the CIA, and in turn, come after the government or presidents, like, it eventually, one way or another, they're gonna come after, it's gonna be a wrap. Like, you're not about to just come after certain politicians or governments and institutions and think that there's not going to be no repercussions for that. And, you know, there's a lot of people now that feel like, man, the government controls the newspapers and they only tell us what the government wants us to know or see or whatever. So I'm just saying all of that to say that, you know, it sucks that he committed suicide, but like part of me feels like I don't know this dude. First time I'm hearing about him, but he must have known. He should have known what would have happened, what was going to happen if he tried to attack major institutions like that. Like, you're not just going to attack them and they're going to sit idly by. They're going to smear campaign and all that stuff towards you.
In the minutiae of attacking or defending Webb's journalism, the focus on the CIA's involvement in the drug trade began to get lost. A fact that internal CIA documents held up as a good example of managing a public relations nightmare. But in 1998, the CIA's own Inspector General released a report essentially admitting that many elements of the Dark Alliance story were true. That the agency had known that people linked with the Contras were importing cocaine, had done nothing to stop them, and had even protected them from investigation.
So you had the CIA finally coming to the table and admitting that what we reported in the 80s and what Webb reported...
Bruh. Yo, that's great.
In the 90s was in fact true.
Mr. Meneses was actually indicted in 1984. He was known within, my own sources in DEA told me he was known as El Rey de la Droga, the king of drugs. He was in more than 40 files and indicted mysteriously, and people within DEA say that it was CIA intervention that kept this sealed indictment from ever being opened.
In one case detailed in the report, when traffickers linked to the Nicaraguan king of drugs, Norwin Meneses, were busted in San Francisco in 1983, the CIA even requested that tens of thousands of dollars, which had been seized, be returned to the drug traffickers.
The CIA admitted that they knew that these guys were selling drugs and had went to the Attorney General and asked the Attorney General could they not report it. Because the mission that they were trying to accomplish was so big, it was a matter of U.S., what do they call it?
National security?
National security.
So wait, the U.S., the CIA was allowing this kind of to happen, the drugs to go in, and they weren't putting it there, but they were allowing it to happen and funneling the money.
That's what we believe.
This is a complex story, but let's try to answer the big questions. Did the CIA actually sell crack? On the evidence we've got, no. There were no agents with sunglasses and earpieces slinging rocks on the streets of Compton. Did the CIA work with and protect major drug traffickers? Yes, absolutely. They've been forced to admit that publicly. The real tragedy here is that as far as we know, no one from the CIA or the mainstream media even lost their jobs over this. The only people who suffered for it were the journalists who exposed the story and the millions of people targeted by the unjust and racist laws that were passed in response to the 1980s crack crisis.
We'd like to congratulate drugs for winning the war on drugs.
Yo, Vice, y'all killed it with this one, bro. Like, killed it. And it's crazy because part of me was like, man, I need to react to this. I read that title. I'm like, I gotta react to this. Part of me is just like, another part of me is like, what else is like? Is it beyond belief? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you should expect it. Word, that's crazy. But yeah, man, we gonna leave it there. Let me know in the comment section what y'all think about it. If any of y'all have done research on this and y'all wanna put more information out, or you know what I'm saying, anything else that y'all know about this, yeah, let me know in the comment section. But it's crazy, like, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? And it continues today because you still got the opioid epidemic, right? Like, blacks and Hispanics were hit with the crack epidemic. White people are now facing the opioid epidemic, and it makes you wonder, like why? How many people got to die before all of this stuff gets stopped? Yeah, that's neither here nor there, man. But yeah, my name is Reign. Yeah, my mind is blown right now. Like, my name is Reign. Catch you on the flip side. RCP salute. This is one of my favorite videos so far. Wait for it. Dab on them.